Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. We are live today at the Gallery Bar Book and Games Ocean Casino Resort. You can watch all the football here all weekend long, and I can't deter you from that. I'm looking for the 10 best spots. This would be one of them. This would certainly be one of the 10 best spots in the Atlantic City area to watch this game. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14,
It's really
15,
one
16,
screen.
17.
You're counting one screen. It's just the layout.
Right. I mean, I'm just my eyesight right now where I'm sitting. There are at least 20 different screens that you. And keep in mind, the Flyers, Sixers, and Eagles are all playing at the same time Saturday night. You might not, have a distinct.
Yeah. I mean, all I hear is Eagles 8:15. But you know.
All right. Well, let's
go
get
Flyers.
Let's get the latest on the Eagles from Geoff Mosher on a Friday. The injury report comes out. We now know what's happening. Let's take a look at everything with this game, Jeff, and obviously we're going to start with it looks like Maddox would be the one guy who is not going to play in the game. That we know. But everybody else we think is going to be ready to go here?
Yeah, ready to go. Obviously, there are still some injury concerns from those who are going, being the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, the right tackle, Lane Johnson. For Jalen Hurts, he was able to practice fully. He was off the injury report altogether. So that usually means that a guy is taking every single rep that he can take in practice. He's a full participant. It's my understanding. Is he 100%? I don't think anybody expects him to be 100%, and we'll have to see how this game is sort of orchestrated with his involvement in the run game and what he does. I suspect they will not want times, and you never want this anyway. You don't want, 340-pound Dexter Lawrence flattening your quarterback, whether he's healthy or not, but they're going to try to run their offense the way they normally do, but also hope that Jalen is not taking a lot of hits.
Yeah, and we would talk to Sal in the last hour, and he brought up this thing, and I'll ask you. He said, we're going to know right away. I mean, do the Eagles take shots down the field early? Do they do a RPO in that first series? We should find out rather early. And I wonder then, Jeff, does that kind of set up Wink Martindale's mindset? Is he kind of like, let's feel them out for a series here before I figure out the way I want to go after this guy? Because, Jordan Ronan was on with us last hour. He thinks they're going to blitz them. He thinks they're going to come after them, talking to Wink Martindale. Well, they didn't blitz a whole heck of a lot last week. Are they going to feel it out, or are they going to say, nope, we're coming right after you?
Yeah, they didn't blitz a whole lot. They were facing Justin Jefferson. They felt like comfortable giving up yards to TJ Hawkinson. I'm not sure that they're going to feel comfortable sitting in a soft zone against the Eagles, who have a much better offensive line. And when you throw the ball to Dallas Goedert underneath the zone, he's got way more of an ability than Hawkinson to turn around and make plays happen. So teams that just softly play the Eagles, like the Vikings did in week 2, find out that the Eagles have too good of an offensive line to try to just rush for and drop everybody into coverage. So I do think Wink will blitz. Now, the one thing Wink might do, Mike, on your point, it's sort of less Jalen Hurts involved and more the right tackle, Lane Johnson. That he may show blitz, not throw the big guns, just to see how Lane's holding up at right tackle. And if Lane's holding up well, then he might want to force the issue. If Lane is really struggling there because of the torn tendon that he's trying to play through, then he may feel like he's got great advantages with either Kayvon Thibodeau or Azeez Ojulari if he plays winning one-on-one, and then he might want to rely on that a little bit more.
Mosh, what's a bigger question mark in your mind? Jalen's running ability or his passing ability, particularly down the field?
Running ability. I think even in the game, the season finale, even though he was a little rusty, I know he had an interception, he still made plays down the field. He still threw some really nice passes. And the Eagles were just bad in the red zone, which is not characteristic of them. They were 1 for 5. They had over 350 yards total in that game. So I think the running question, though, that clearly they are a different offense, and Miles Sanders especially is a different kind of running back when the defense has to respect the zone read element of the RPO, which would involve Jalen keeping the ball and running off of it. So if he's not running, not even keeping them honest in that regard, then that's a concern.
Who's an X factor outside of, the obvious in Jalen Hurts, but who are, a couple guys on both sides or one side of the ball, whoever you've highlighted or you and the guys that are inside the Birds have highlighted as, all right, if this guy has a big day, it's most likely going to be because the Eagles have won the game.
Well, I guess, is Dallas Goedert the Eagles have so much talent on offense that sometimes it doesn't seem right to call Dallas Goedert an X factor. He probably would have been a Pro Bowler if he had, stayed healthy all year long. He's not exactly someone that's like, oh, I didn't think about that. But the way the Giants play defense, and they throw a lot of defensive backs on the field in nickel and dime packages, and if they do blitz a lot and play a lot of man, they just don't have the kind of guys in coverage that I think can hang with Dallas Goedert. And I mentioned on the podcast, I thought something that the Eagles could do strategically that they don't do a lot is come out in 12 personnel with Dallas Goedert and Jack Stoll and make it look like you're going to run and really run passing out of that. Because when you come out in 12 personnel, the Giants will come out trying to come out with their run defense. And they'll have guys like, who's the safety who used to play for the Giants in Washington? Landon Collins. And they'll have guys like Jared Davis, right? They'll have guys who are on the field that aren't necessarily great coverage guys. And if you can pass out of those formations and run some quick game, no huddle, then get Miles Sanders involved in the running game, you have the Giants in a favorable mismatch for what you want to do. So that is something I can see being, really key for them. And as far as defensively, the Giants are just not, to me, a fearsome type offense. They can be efficient, but they're really not going to strike vertically unless they are able to get Darius Slayton down the field. And the Eagles usually are playing a defensive structure that limits how many times guys are going to beat them over the top. So I just think they have to be fundamentally sound defensively, and they'll be fine. When you look at this game, guys, not to be arrogant about the Eagles, but the only way I see them losing, like I said in the podcast, is if they have one of those, like that game against Washington when they turned the ball over 4 times and they did things uncharacteristic. So as long as the Eagles protect the ball, I think they're going to be all right.
How much Boston Scott are we going to see? Everyone loves to talk about him as the giant killer.
Truly amazing.
Listen.
Seriously, guys, I have been on 3 different Giant shows this week. They've all asked me about Boston Scott. So they realize it too.
Touchdown in both the games this year. Are we going to see a heavy dose of Boston Scott? What's the game plan?
It's funny. I joked on the podcast that they literally should treat Boston Scott in games against the Giants like the Titans do with Derrick Henry and just give him the ball 30 times and see if he doesn't have 260 total yards and 3 touchdowns, because that's just how amazing he's been against them. But no, I don't think there's going to be any force feeding of Boston Scott. In fact, I'm sure if we go through all these games where he has scored, it's because he came in at the right time in the right place and kind of, struck the Giants in that kind of way, more so than he's just really good when they play the Giants. And that's mostly coincidence in the way I see it. So I think that they'll just get him his standard amount of touches.
Well, some of it is circumstance, because they play the Giants a lot in a week 17 or 18 game when the game doesn't mean that much. So he gets playing time. He's played in some games where there's been injuries. So I think it's a lot of coincidence. The Eagles certainly aren't hey, Boston Scott has their number. Let's game plan him more, right?
Maybe they should be.
There's no way that they're game planning him more against that one particular
There's
opponent.
only one way to find out, fellas.
That's right.
30 touches. There's only one way.
It's unbelievable.
No, but you know how teams buy draft picks nowadays? They'll literally trade for an overpriced veteran and a 4th-round pick and take on that salary because what they really want is the 4th-round pick, and they know that they're going to be bad. To me, the Giants would be ridiculous this offseason if they just don't sign Boston Scott for $1 more than whatever anybody else is offering him, just to keep him from this division and killing them for another year. If it's what is it going to be? $1.5 million? Is that what his salary is? The Giants can afford that.
I want to get your thoughts. A.J. Brown was the big offseason pickup trade, if you will, and then they signed him on offense. But Hassan Reddick was the big move on defense. He was the defensive player of the month, multiple sacks in multiple games. How much of a factor does he need to be, and does this matchup allow for him to be?
Oh, it certainly does. I mean, if you look at the area that it can all come undone for the New York Giants is right tackle, where Evan Neal, one of their first round draft picks, has struggled this year. And there's no doubt about it. He struggled in the games that the Eagles played. I mean, that first game, he struggled. And even in the season finale, all the starters got rested, but not him. He's out there because they know he needs to get better. And he struggled in that game too. And even against the Vikings, he had some reps that were not favorable for him. If Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat don't take advantage, if for whatever reason they get stonewalled by this guy, then that's an issue. I mean, they should have they should not have problems getting by him. He has been a guy who really needs a lot of development for the Giants.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm curious on your take. We talked on Monday, so here we are on Friday. Was the last time we talked to Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds podcast. Daniel Jones is getting a lot of love. We just had Jordan on, and he's saying, look, you guys aren't giving this guy enough credit. I mean, he's one of the, the way he's played, his numbers might not say it, just decision-making, where he's going with the ball, that kind of stuff. Can the Giants, in your mind, nickel and dime their way up and down the field enough times to pull this thing? Like, is that their way to go? Hey, Daniel Jones, you've been playing great. We need you here. Because Saquon Barkley ran the ball 9 times last week. So is this a team that is morphing into a Daniel Jones short passing game offense?
It is. The amazing thing is the Giants started off 7-2. And when they were 7-2, Saquon Barkley was number 2 in the NFL in rushing attempts behind Derrick Henry. And I believe he was number 1 in the NFL in rushing, and he was averaging 4.7 yards per carry. So he was doing really well, and the Giants were 7-2. The Giants did not keep that trend going. They lost games over the second half. But even despite that, they were still changing their offense to become more Daniel Jones passing-centric. And obviously, they took some lumps in the second half of the season. They lost some close games. They had a tie against Washington. But they won the Vikings game, no doubt, because they threw the ball against that soft Vikings zone, and Daniel Jones was really efficient. And I imagine he'll try to, especially if Jonathan Gannon comes out with a soft zone like he has at times, they'll try to do the same thing. But to answer your question, it's funny because I think I saw Ryan shaking his head, and I agree. Like, they can nickel and dime all they want. Can they score 24 points against this Eagles defense doing it? Because even if the Eagles played the same exact soft zone that the Vikings did, the Eagles have 10 times more talent on defense than the Vikings do. So by personnel only, I think the Eagles would love it if the Giants just nickeled and dimed their way down the field, because the Eagles probably think they can score at least 28 points against this Giants team, as long as, again, the quarterback's throwing the ball all right, running, and the right tackle holds his own with the injury. And the Giants are going to have to match them point for point. And this is not an offense that I think can do that. I
mean, I'm not being sarcastic or a jerk here. Like, all jokes aside, what's the other option for the New York Giants? Like, we're saying nickel and diming, and I joked in the first hour, we were having a serious conversation, and we were saying,
very serious.
It was very serious. There was nothing to joke about. But, we were using the term dink and dunk for the Giants. We're like, we could see a path where Jones and the Giants are dinking and dunking down the field, 12-play drive, and then I'm sitting there and I say, what's this conversation look like if it's Eagles-Niners? Are we bringing up the phrase dink and dunk as a concern?
Right. No, I mean, look, this is what the Giants – you're right. There's no alternative. Stephen Baker ain't walking through that tunnel. This ain't 1990. They're not beating anybody over the top. I think Ryan was probably in diapers when Stephen Baker was scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, it might not have even been born, yeah.
Stephen Baker, the touchdown maker.
Touchdown maker, exactly. So, they will have to nickel and dime. They will have to control the possession as much as possible, which they're capable of doing, especially if Gannon's going to play a softer zone. But at the end of the day, they're also going to have to then play great defense to keep the Eagles from scoring a lot of points. And they're going to have to produce takeaways which they have a really good front four. I think it's a little underrated now that Leonard Williams is back and Dexter Lawrence is one of the most improved players in the league. Ojulari is a good pass rusher. He's a little banged up. We'll see if he plays. And Thibodeau is kind of morphing into his own. So they have a nice little foundation there, but they don't have guys that are known for producing a whole lot of takeaways on that defense. So again, Martindale's going to have to scheme the crap out of this game, and someone's going to have to come up with interceptions or fumble recoveries. The Eagles are going to have to play a sloppy game because the Eagles can control the ball as well as anybody.
Yeah, the whole, I think we all agree, everybody listening, if the Eagles turn the ball over and you have a Giants situation where they're giving the ball short field, all that kind of jazz, then, that's a terrible situation for this team. But if the Eagles play a clean game, the Giants almost have to be perfect. We go back to the nickel and diming thing. We were talking about everybody hates John Gannon, but the whole premise of the defense is if you're going to have 10, 11 play drives on us, you're going to have to be perfect. Most time 10, 11 play drives end up in sack, interception, fumble, penalty,
punt.
And if they end up just kicking a field goal, John Gannon wins. That's what they want. They're okay giving up 3. And look, the Saints, they had a 14-play drive or whatever it was, and they got 6. They didn't do anything after that. Now, they happened to win the game because the Eagles' offense didn't do anything. But if the Eagles' defense plays the same game against the Giants that they did against the Saints, they should win that game.
You just described the theory and the game in a nutshell because Andy Dalton literally was perfect. Was he 14 for 14, right? He was perfect. And then Jonathan Gannon said, okay, we're going to tighten the screws a little bit on our coverage. And then all the sacks came. And, yes, you're right, they lost the game, but not because of the defense there. And you'd have to think that this offense with Jalen Hurts back, again, and this is yet to be seen. We could all be wrong here. Maybe he's hurting more so than they're letting on or whatever. But I'm going to go under the assumption that 5 weeks removed from when the injury actually happened, he's going to be stronger, be able to make some throws. And as long as they're well protected, which, again, it's tough with this Martindale defense. He threatens your protection schemes, but the Eagles should be able to move the ball.
Just sidetrack for a second. I'm sure Gil was going to get your final thoughts and predictions, but assuming the Eagles win this game, who would you say is coming down to the link for the NFC Championship game, Dallas or San Francisco?
It's a great question, man. I mean, the way San Francisco is playing, it's hard to see them losing at home. But the law of averages catches up to everybody. What have they won, 10 or 11 in a row now?
11,
so
yeah,
that's a lot. I mean, they're not going to. Are they going to win 15 in a row and take this whole thing? I don't know. So I give Dallas a shot, a real strong shot, especially if they play the same way they played last week against Tampa Bay. To me, it's a little bit of a knockdown, drag them out. If you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say the 49ers. Sure. But I swear, I really, as the week has gone on, I've started to feel more and more like Dallas might win the game as we go on here. Because as good as San Francisco is, well, I guess you could say this about the Eagles. I mean, every team. It's not like they have some kind of win during that 10 or 11 game winning streak that you feel is, man, they really clobbered a really good team there. There just aren't that many good teams.
Brock Purdy's a third-string quarterback still.
Yeah.
He hasn't played
so
like
he
one
could
yet.
Become one. Right.
Right. Yep.
Well, Jeff, I know this game, the Eagles haven't played 2 weeks. I think that adds to everybody. You're breaking down every angle for 2 weeks. And last week it was, hey, we really want to play the Giants. That's the worst team in the field. And then you get the Giants and you're like, they just won. They look pretty good. Can they do this? Can they do that? Look, this is the biggest talent disparity that's left, I think, in any of these matchups. The Eagles are just way better than the Giants are. The Giants are a well-coached team. They're going to be prepared. But generally, that's nice for a round. But to get to the NFC Championship game, the Giants just don't have an NFC Championship roster. This would be a monumental failure of a loss, right?
It's funny. That's how I opened up the podcast with Adam. I said, Adam, we see some upsets every year, but, are we really envisioning the New York Giants, who have been one of the losingest franchises in the league for the last 5 years going into this year, in the NFC Championship game? That just seems a little too much too soon.
I guess the one thing would be, look, the Bengals were a down rotten team forever, and they did it last year, and nobody felt that. Could the Giants be the Bengals?
I mean, unless Joe Burrow puts on a Giants jersey,
Well, Jordan just told us that Daniel Jones' QBR was actually better than Joe Burrow's this year.
Unbelievable. I would say that if this would remind me more of when the Titans beat the Ravens 4 years ago, when the Ravens had 14 wins. Lamar was MVP. The Titans were in, I think, the second year of Vrabel, and then they went to the conference championship game, right? And then they had a 17-0 lead on Kansas City until the Chiefs woke up and realized that they were way better and won the game. But even that Tennessee team, guys, had been 9-7 the year before. Like, this would be one of the most impressive upsets in the playoff history of the NFL if the Giants were to win this game.
All right.
Bo, by the way, though, really interesting stat. I don't know if you guys have seen this. The Giants have a streak going on. Since 1990, they have won 6 consecutive games when facing the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Is that amazing?
I don't like that stat. I don't love it.
If you think about the last 2 times that they beat the New England Patriots, to get there, they had to beat the number 1 seed Packers and the number 1 seed 49ers. That was 2008, 2012. And then they went and beat the Patriots, who were number 1 seed. So that's your 4-0. And then in 1990, they beat the number 1 seeded 49ers, Bill Walsh's team, then went to the Super Bowl and beat the number 1 seed Bills on the Norwood missed field goal. So 6-0 against number 1 seeds.
Well, conversely, they've lost 9 straight in Philadelphia. And the Eagles, by the way, did you know this, have never lost a home divisional round game. They have never lost in this round.
You guys are trying to jinx the Eagles right now. I don't know what's going on.
I'm telling you, the law of averages is like eating itself up right now. It doesn't know where to go.
Somebody's just going. Somebody's O has got to go. I mean, the Giants are either going to lose to a number 1 seed or the Eagles are going to lose a divisional round game at home, which hasn't happened ever. And they've beaten the Giants 9 straight in Philadelphia. So all of this stuff happens on Saturday night. Geoff Mosher, who wins and why?
I got 30-20 Eagles.
Same score as me. How about that?
Oh, how about that? There you go.
30-20 Eagles.
And why I say why is because the Eagles score 30 and the Giants score 20. That's why.
Can't argue it.
You'll get more breakdown like that on the Inside the Birds podcast, and they'll break it off. When are you doing your pregame show?
Thank you. Noon to 2 tomorrow. Noon to 2. So on all of our Inside the Birds YouTube channel, we'll have the full cast, Greg Cosell, Jason Avant. I just finished up the script a couple minutes ago. We got really good stuff. Like, a lot of people can't handle the fact that media is saying the Giants are an improved team. They're a better team. Whoa, and they're like 3-7 over the last. No, well, you get healthy players like Adoree Jackson, Leonard Williams, and Xavier McKinney back, and you're improved. So we have really good stuff on what they've been doing over the last few weeks to become a better team.
Gotcha. All right. Well, listen to the pod. Get you ready for the game. All right, Mosh. We'll talk to you Monday.
All right, man. Enjoy the weekend, guys.